Please welcome Sean Price, President, SuccessFactors SAP Cloud.
Welcome to the stage.
Thanks, Ray. Who knew that enterprise software was so sexy these days? Did you see that video?
I know, look at all these ads. So, very cool. Well, we've been spending the last few days talking about the art of the possible, then moving on the art of the possible. And there are a couple things that are happening, and we just listened to Tim Sullivan talk about the org and what's all wrong about the org and why things don't work. I kind of want to take a step back and before we jump in deep on some of the areas, really talk about future of work. Right? What are the trends? What's changing? What are you seeing? What are your customers saying? Why do we need a shift in how we work?
Thanks, Ray. First, it's great to be here, and thanks very much for having us. And good morning, everybody. It's quite a remarkable seat that we are the beneficiary to sit in. We sit with about 23 million subscribers who use us every day, and so we have a pretty unique point of view and vantage point. And I think one of the starting points is to look at even something that just happened to SuccessFactors, our acquisition by SAP. It's not a normal acquisition, right? In my view, it's a story of acquisition done right. When was the last time you saw a multi-billion-dollar global organization acquire a company for multiple billions of dollars and then give them the autonomy to ensure that the transfer of DNA occurs? And that is a really unique thing. A lot of companies get acquired, they roll it into the big machine, and immediately thereafter you have this company that has lost the people that have built and innovated and support and implement. And SAP did a very self-aware thing.
What's your attrition rate? Because most of the time this happens and you lose like 20-30% of the people, all the good people leave after the handcuffs are gone.
It's actually gone the other way, Ray. Pre-acquisition to today, our attrition rate has declined more than 30%. So the same people are there that built the product, innovate, implement, and I think it's part of this shift to much more self-aware organization. So we see that first and foremost, that the old patterns of the past don't universally fit to the future. I think the other trends that are, when you propel a multi-billion-dollar business at triple-digit growth rates, it's way beyond just beautiful technologies and how your customers interact. There has to be something much more fundamental. What we're seeing is, at the forefront of this, is an enormous talent gap and experience shortage. We have every day in the US now for the next 19 years, 10,000 people turn 65, and we'll do so every single day. That means we're losing all of the tribal knowledge, we're losing all of the content from the organization. On the front end of that pipeline, you have the millennials, and there just simply are not enough. And the experience gap plus the talent shortage, and then fundamentally the way we work. I'd point you to your own app. What a beautiful thing. Is it Double Dutch?
Yeah, the Constellation Event app.
Incredible. Everything in one place. Why would you need a web page when you have that application? So those apps are a reimagining of the way we work. So those three trends are really propelling us to reevaluate how do we put the right talent in the right place, attached to the right strategy, at the right time, and measured the right way.
Now, do you guys eat your own dog food, drink your own champagne? It's a big company, and so how do you get people to move?
Yeah, we do. And I think a lot of the movement's born out of necessity. Right? Think about recruiting for a minute. Recruiting used to be, let's push as many people as we can through the applicant tracking system. That's not recruiting of today. The recruiting of today actually starts with a strategic plan that you build from your workforce planning and analytics infrastructure. Who do I need? Where do I need them? How much do they cost? And secondly, who do I have that I might be able to groom and evolve into support of that strategy? Because often when you turn the dime and you want to grow, there just aren't enough people available. So you have to look both inwards and outwards. That workforce planning and analytics application then feeds recruiting marketing. Why? Because it's about creating a relationship in advance of the time that you need to flip the switch to hire them. It's going and creating these warm talent pools where you're actually creating an interaction and a bond, particularly in the backdrop of millennials.
But who's driving these changes? Is this, is the HR manager saying this is where this future is going? Is it the CEO saying we need to make a change? Or is it the IT guy saying, this stuff's getting old?
It's driven really on a couple of dimensions. I think first and foremost, if you look at the change of how business is being conducted globally, is coming from different areas. The talents and the cultures don't look the same. So it's no longer let's universally apply the US nomenclature for how we acquire talent. So a strategy is deployed, maybe it's growth oriented, the way that they're acquiring is different, and the way that we interact is different. I have actually an example in my own company. We hired a very senior executive comms person by the name of Ashley Colombo, who's here with me today, who's walking out of the room. And she was interviewing at a number of different locations. And instead of connecting via mobile, turning it around in a couple of days, pulling her resume off LinkedIn, doing peer review across the network who I know who worked with her, looking at social, getting a composite view, and then acting very decisively, the companies we were competing with were actually asking her to download some arcane version of Word, convert her resume, submit it on an online form, and it was just 2 weeks versus 3 days has been the transition. So it's driven by the technology, it's driven by the operating model, it's driven by the need to fulfill an incredible competition in the talent gap.
So in the time you brought her on board, your competitors were still having her download and mail something back?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's pretty significant of a change.
It is. There's a lot of examples like that. There's one in Tokyo, a global retailer, who's reimagined, the classic problem in retail is I have these peaks where I have to fulfill talent requirements, and then I can never get enough people at the right time is the net problem. So what they did is they found out that the people who shop in their locations are the actual people that work in their locations. It's one of these brands that appeals to the younger audience. So they created a mobile app. They redefined the role of recruiting to the manager in the store level. You could take a QC code, or you could link an SMS, your LinkedIn resume to the store manager. Remember those warm talent pools? Now I've got a recipient and I've got the manager to make the decision in the same place at the same time. They collapsed recruiting from 2 weeks to 2 days because they connect at that moment in time. And so it's reimagining the technologies to solve age-old problems that's being driven by our technology capabilities and the strategy.
But once again, the strategy here is it coming from the HR team? Is it a company decision to say we really have to change the way we work with our employees? What's the driver here?
Yeah, it's HR is playing a more fundamental role than it ever has. At no time in our history,
It's not just an extension of legal.
It's not an extension of legal. It doesn't sit as as a centralized transactional engine anymore. HR has fundamentally transitioned into a strategic weapon for the smart companies that get it.
So what's a profile of a company that gets it? What do they look like?
Well,
what's the cultural DNA of a company that gets it?
I can give you an example that we've been through recently, which is a global transformation, and it's PepsiCo. They have close to 300,000 employees. Their operating model changed. A lot of their revenue was coming out of Brazil, Russia, India, China, no longer traditional markets. And this operating model change required a rethinking of the infrastructure to support the strategy. And so they decided to blend an entire global footprint in 83 countries in the cloud because of the innovation and all of the mobile and social extensions, and retain some of the infrastructure in the US on a 24-month deployment. And they can measure it very clearly. One of the areas that you're alluding to here is how do you measure new processes in this new world with KPIs?
Right.
These 23 million users who interact with us every day have given us 2,000 benchmarks and KPIs and best practices.
So you're able to share global benchmarks among your customers?
Absolutely, not just within peer-to-peer validation, but in instrumentation. A couple of examples. Firstly, I think there's a lot of.
So PepsiCo can compare with Coke if they wanted to, or someone else, like a large alcoholic beverage provider.
Do you think that the talent and the strategies of those companies are so dissimilar between the same? Not really.
No, not at
So
all.
what is the strategic weapon of the future if it's not talent to drive that change?
I would hope so.
Me too. I'm counting on it.
You're counting on it? Okay. No, but so you got three, the growth areas, right? What makes it different? You're talking Brazil, Russia, India, China, these are growth areas for everybody, especially in fast-moving consumer goods. So, what are they looking at? Is it they're not recruiting fast enough? They're able to bring the right skills to the table?
I think all of the above. First, it's hard to instrument. Take the most simple use case. I was in Mexico recently looking at a federal department, and they have 3 million employees in that group. And it's not dissimilar to where we are, right? What skill sets do I have? Where do they reside? Things like future management bench strength. I want to launch a strategy. Who do I have who's available today? Who do I have in 6 months? Who do I have in 12 months to even be able to pull this off? The CEO delivers the operating model and strategy. How do I know that I've really allocated the headcount against that, and that it's resourced in the right way?
You just described something that's just flashed in my head. It's like almost HR is turning into CRM. There's a funnel of candidates and that you're trying to target, that you're trying to bring out. There's some of those principles coming back.
Yeah, we think CRM is probably not the right technology for how you manage candidates,
No.
as you can
No,
imagine.
no, not at all.
Yeah,
But-
it's human capital management is about the recruit to retire life cycle and the employee life cycle end to end. And that talent acquisition is but one part, right? It's equally important on the performance and goals. Learning management is a huge area. Succession, compensation, core HR in the cloud. And this has to be aligned end to end in that recruit to retire. So yes, you're absolutely right. The front end is about the acquisition.
Okay, so shifting to that, the technologies are changing. We talked about the 5 pillars of digital business, right? Talking about social, mobile, cloud, big data, and video, and you see, and how it comes together. What's shifting on your end, right? How are people adopting this in terms of HCM technologies?
Yeah, I think there's 2 areas that we might want to double click on for a minute. One is the notion of analytics, right? In the past, HR and line of business would aggregate data, run reports in the rearview mirror.
So are you shortening not to say big data?
I think you'll see that big data is a little different than as a building block component of our predictive HCM strategy.
Okay. So you're doing analytics and prediction.
Yeah, predictive HCM, of which big data is a component. I think what happens is big data becomes this giant catch-all, and we're describing something different for the first time, the advent of predictability. And so it builds off of this aggregate data where we looked in the rearview mirror, then we tried to segment it and say, what are the correlations between different segments? And then what we've done is we've taken the 2,000 KPIs and metrics, and we've created indexes, which are basically correlations between 2 or more indexes.
So you're tying business process back to metrics because you're really focusing in on outcomes?
Outcomes and instrumentation. I'm going to give you an example of an index. Voluntary turnover rate. You can only look at what it's been in the past, but if I want to get a sense of the millennials,
and explain voluntary turnover rate to people in the audience. Not everyone's on HR.
So it's when an individual in an organization decides to leave the organization at any point in time. And so how do you characterize the risk segments in your workforce to be able to have a point of view?
Oh, so you're trying to predict when someone's more likely to leave than others.
How much risk you've got.
How do you know what the factors are?
So the factors to us, it turns out that first and foremost, a lot of companies believe if you ask them, are you a meritocracy? And they go, of course we're a meritocracy. You go, great, let's run this index which measures annual salary increase, engagement, and performance reviews. And let's see what happens. And so we run that index across 23 million subscribers, and by far the majority come back, and it's tenure. What do you think the implication of tenure to a Gen X who's interested not in tenure, they're interested in, I want a pathway, I want skills development, there's a blending of life, you're done. So you've got a liability and exposure in that segment because of that one index. And it's almost akin to the success factors index that we're building. And there's multitude, and you can only get there with data. Is that big data? Of course, it's got pieces of big data.
It doesn't have to be.
But it
yeah.
doesn't have to be.
So you're taking the transactional data, you're taking some factors in the market. You're also able to compare against what other industries?
Absolutely. So what's the voluntary turnover rate in retail in Japan, A versus B? Because we can anonymize that data, and we've got lots of contributions and
So you're more than just a transactional HR system. You're more than just doing talent. You're actually now taking that data and brokering information now.
Absolutely.
So you're brokering insights.
Absolutely we are. And benchmarking and guidance, because the future work is about
how
abstracting.
many users are on the system?
23 million today.
So you got benchmark data on 23 million users, anonymized.
Not all 23 million
Are in the
opt in to that anonymization. I can't give you the exact number, but it's a huge amount.
And this is all in the cloud?
All in the cloud.
Okay.
All subscription.
All subscription, all in the cloud. Very interesting. Okay.
There's a piece to this, though, that's adjacent, right? It's not just about guiding with benchmarks and KPIs. So much of what's happening in my world is about the abstraction of complexity. And what's become even more important to a degree is the community side of my business. We get about 150,000 odd unique visits a month to our community. But what's fascinating is the amount of time on the site has gone from 21 minutes to 49. And this is about peer-to-peer interaction. This is about best practices. This is about access to content that isn't related to technology or architecture or any of the other things you would expect. So you start to combine the anonymized data with the community. I think that strategy is based on belief. And if you get the belief wrong, your strategy's wrong. I'm uniquely advantaged, in my view, with all of that data to consume.
So how do they access the community? Are they using mobility? Or
Absolutely.
Did that increase the amount of usage?
It absolutely did. I mean, I don't know why mobility is a category anyway. I mean, it's mobility first, and in many cases, mobility only. If you're not contemplating, because subscription businesses are about usage and consumption and value. And so many of these transactions happen when we're away, you know.
So the in-between time.
The in-between time.
The wait time.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just hit on mobile,
Yep.
social with the community,
Yep.
the analytics piece. We assumed you're in the cloud.
Yep.
All right, you're missing video. I'm just kidding. What do we do on the video side? Is that the learning management or?
Yeah, actually, that's where we're seeing some of the most dramatic transformations, actually. If you think about this experience gap,
Yeah.
how do you capture the content that's leaving your organization? And how do you move from the old world, which is, let me buy $1,400 an hour horizontal content for compliance. Okay, we do that. We need that. But what the new world isn't about that. The new world's about subject matter experts. And it's about the creation of content in the way that I consume it and you consume it. I don't want a 20-minute course. I want a 5-minute soundbite delivered to me via mobile, just in time, and I want it searchable, like I search Facebook or Google. I want to search for what's the #1 trending content piece that I should subscribe to and consume via mobile. The other piece that's happening, and I saw, you know, as you've looked at your guests over the last couple of days, is gamification. So if you're going to go to an environment that incentivizes subject matter expertise, how do you then get people to contribute?
Well, it's the age-old problem. Like, what's in it for me to contribute to the knowledge base?
Yeah, I think there's two things. It's amazing how many resumes we see that actually show the stack ranking of that individual and their contribution to their internal communities, because it means I'm an expert, it means I contribute, and you know, we want to incentivize that. And in fact, as you look at the aging workforce and expert workforce and the youth workforce, you're seeing sort of this dual mentorship, bidirectional mentorship that's occurring. One piece is content, the other is consumption, and together it's a pretty interesting dynamic in the workplace today.
So you just described, we talked about the 5 pillars of digital business. HR is moving into a digital business world.
It is in the digital business world.
It's already in there.
It's already happened.
Okay, that's
Fully
very
happened.
interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to jump to something else.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
all right, if you weren't doing tech, right? If you were not in the tech field and this wasn't your bailiwick, what else would you be doing?
Ray, I love this. Do I have to get a new job?
No, not hinting. You got started. So,
Yeah, you know.
or do you just love tech?
No, I love tech, but I think that so much of today, if you look at our roles and what we do globally, and it's always on and always connected, I always have pursued passions adjacent to this, so that this isn't the only thing that defines
I
you.
mean, you push the limits in a lot of your passions.
Well, it's personal, right? For me, it's about what can I do that's immersive, because I want to be removed, and I want to be completely captivated by what I'm doing. And for me, that was really two things. It was racing cars professionally and racing motorcycles, and that really has been a remarkable journey, and a very, very lucky. It was like akin to playing ice hockey, and someone grabs you and says, "Hey, Ray, come and play with us in the Stanley Cup playoff," and you stand next to the goalpost and 3 pucks bounce off you. You know, that's what it was akin to for me. And
Well, tell us more about the racing.
Yeah, I've always raced motorcycles, and in 2002 I did a race across Africa called the Paris-Dakar Rally, and it was a dream of mine. It was.
This isn't something you just pick up and do, okay? I mean, this is a serious race here.
I had been doing, you know, Baja 1000 many times and the Baja 500, and had a lot of experience off-road, and it was a dream, and I had the time and had the training and the support, and there's so many times in your life you talk about, I'm going to push myself against what benchmark, you know, against where do you really push yourself? And for me, it was Paris-Dakar. I came back out of there first humbled. I cried like a baby at the finish line. It was 19 days, 14,000 miles. I finished very low in the pack, but it wasn't about that for me. It was about the experience and what I was made of, and you know, the commitment to achieve that, and it changed me. I was spending my whole life driving with a 5-speed gearbox, thinking that was it, and all of a sudden I had 2 extra gears available to me instantaneously that I never even knew existed.
Wow. So that was the equivalent of you're running a marathon for everybody else.
Yeah, I'm sure people do all kinds of things.
Yeah,
like
just
that.
to push limits on performance. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, taking it back, I mean, you've been in the Valley for a while, right? And you've seen the different shifts, the changes, what's happening in technology. I mean, what's different, right? What's different this time around in terms of innovation, this push? I mean, we think enterprise is sexy, but what's the shift?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the way we work and our expectations, right? Even to contemplate your last question, to race Paris-Dakar, or to race and Daytona and have a professional career and run companies is unheard of, right? And so there's this blending of work-life balance, which we've heard of. I think that there's also a movement towards less hierarchy. I've always struggled my entire career, how do I get out of the box that the world puts me in? You know, our analysts, our venture capitalists, our recruiters, and our past experience put us in this box. But what if I don't want to be an enterprise software guy, and I want to be a cloud guy, or I want to be a mobile guy, or I want to be a consumer guy? How do I get out of that box? And I think now, for the first time in the Valley, just with the way we work, we have an opportunity to really explore legitimately these different pathways. And I don't really think that people are thinking linearly or hierarchically or within a set of defined companies.
So project-focused, outcomes-focused, very temporal. Experiential. And maybe that goes back to some of the things Tim was talking about around transaction costs, right? Trying to drive down the transaction costs of being inside an organization.
Absolutely. And you know, HR isn't in charge of your career anymore. You are. You're in charge of your career.
Who believes that?
I believe that. Every single day I wake up, I do. Most of the people that work for me believe that. I think if you look at management and leadership style today, the best leaders support that. It's not hierarchical. It's not command and control, to Tim's point of view. It's allowing people to work in the framework in a much more fluid dynamic. It's not about owning all the resources in a hardline reporting. It's working cross-boundary and across diversity in the organization. And the good leaders that get it thrive, and people follow and work with them. And you know, the average tenure for Gen X is less than 2 years. And there's this inflection point at 6 months where the recruiter calls them up and says, "Hey man, how was it? Did you bond with the org? Did they put their arms around you? Is it what you thought?" And there's a huge cliff where they pull you back out if you don't deliver that in today's world.
Well, it's true, and recruiters in the Valley actually do really well with repeat business.
Absolutely.
It's a really high cycle time. So.
Absolutely.
But, well, good. Okay. Well, all right. So, future of work is changing, right? We see the different pieces coming together around a digital business. It's becoming much more strategic in the boardroom. But what's changing with customers, right, in terms of where their investments are? I mean, is there really this big shift in terms of investment in HR? I mean, what did you see at the HR Tech Conference a few weeks back and your SuccessFactors Connect event?
Mayhem. Absolute mayhem.
Mayhem. Good mayhem or bad mayhem?
Good mayhem.
Okay.
Mayhem and a redefining of what this recruit to retire employee lifecycle picture needs to look like. The fact that companies are waking up and missing numbers in competitive markets where growth isn't coming easily. There's an argument here that says human capital management end-to-end applies both equally in a decline company, because the talent that you preserve and the arms that you put around them and how you quantify whether they're actual performers to get you out of the hole is equally as important as the growth strategy. So this is a technology that encompasses, growth, flat, and in decline, and companies are reevaluating that end to end. I think that HR has never been more relevant, more important, and more impactful than they've been in the last 12 to 18 months.
Okay. All right, last question, signature question. What future technology or gadget would you love to have if you could have it? If you can bring it back from the future, something in sci-fi, want to bring it back in the past, something that's memorable, what's your favorite gadget?
Wow, Ray, I wasn't expecting that as the last question, but let me think.
And no transporters.
No, I'm not going to do a
That's
transporter.
the ultimate winner.
Just a show of hands, how many of you remember the neutralizer in Men in Black when they bring up the neutralizer? If you look at so much of what we've talked about today, and you look about all of our starting point and foundation, it's based in many cases on the past. And I wish we could, in some cases, in some ways, use the neutralizer to remove the past so that we go forward. It's not about what you've done. It's not about necessarily where you've been. You might use it contextually, but in the Valley and in these high growth businesses and in these transformative businesses, it's really about the trust and the promise of the future. And so much of our future is predicated on beliefs of the past, which may or may not be right or wrong. We may be carrying stuff forward that we don't need to. So for me, I think just elimination of past sins is a good one, and our pathway to the future would probably be one of the coolest gadgets that I could think of.
Well, this is wonderful. Before we get into questions, a big round of applause for Sean Price. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ray, very much. Appreciate being here.
All right, we got time for about 2 questions. If we look around, I think Courtney's there with mics, and raise your hand. Yep, one to stage right and one stage left. I think that's Ben.
Yeah, hi, it's Ben from Box. You mentioned HR being data-driven. I get it on the technology side because we're building that into the technologies. How are you seeing the HR departments getting up to that? Because getting up to speed on the data side of things, because it's not in their traditional what they've done. You know, they've been a service department.
Great, thanks for your question, Ben. I think that you've got two types of data in the HCM function. You have the traditional transactional data that HR is very comfortable with, but there's a movement now to employee self-service, management self-service, and you split data into two dimensions, really. One is the governance piece that I, as an organization globally, need to adhere to. There's 30 or 40% of the data that needs to be supported. The other 60, 70% is interpretive. I've got massive sets of data, but I want to cut it and slice it because the maternity leave policy in Norway is maybe far better, and I want to assume that in Brazil, not for fact, or I want to look at data in a different way to the nuance of my business. So data has become democratized, it's become abstracted, and I get to drive it from an employee self-service, management self-service, and corporate governance perspective. Rather than in the past calling IT or HR and saying, can you build and wait, it's now about abstraction of that complexity, and it's available not just in your connected browser, but through your smartphone, anywhere, in any slice. That's on the analytics piece. On the anonymized data piece and KPI and metrics, that's just a subscription at a moment in time that you use opportunistically. So we're seeing a fundamental shift in the role of HR from transactional to strategic and enablement of the line of business.
All right, one last question. I think there was one over there earlier. I'm not sure. Yes. Elaine and Dennis, I believe there's a question there. There we go. David, thank you.
Hey, Sean and Ray, it's Peter Delavet from the Mercury News. I'm going to be up there in a few minutes. But, Sean, I got to ask you, since I've got you on the spot here, you guys obviously had a tremendous M&A event. Workday had a very well-regarded IPO. I'm seeing, and everybody in the room is seeing, a tremendous amount of investor enthusiasm for enterprise software, and especially cloud-based enterprise software. Can you talk a little bit, big picture, about how you see those trends continue to play out in terms of the appetite that Wall Street is going to have, that investors are going to have, and that the demand that the enterprise has for these kinds of cloud-based tools disrupting entrenched tools?
Yeah, there's something really beautiful about this notion of annual recurring revenue model, and the economics to support it are vastly different. So I think all of the subscription businesses are in for growth because they measure one thing fundamentally. Did you use my technology and absorb the innovation? Did you get value from that? And then when I have my renewal, I have this beautiful annual recurring revenue model that is really nice. I think the economics of how you measure these businesses is still being fundamentally debated between Wall Street and how companies measure. You know, you can look at things like what is the cost of acquisition on a sales and marketing expense basis for $1 of ACV? And then you look at the expense side of that and you say, what does it cost to service that base, whether it's research and development, G&A, or the account management function. And so I think that this model is beautiful because it's the ultimate measurement of value. It's driven in many instances by line of business and IT. And we think that it's a model that is incredibly powerful. When you combine that with coexistence with what you already own, we see this new emerging category called enterprise SaaS, where it's actually mission critical. It's things like payroll, and it's time and attendance and benefits and core HR in the cloud. So I think that you're seeing a representation of that and an acknowledgement of the importance of that model.
Would you also see the shift from the first sell, which changes the direction of selling software, to buying software?
Yeah, absolutely. It's more about organic demand with a hand raise, where it's less about how well I market and more about what is the pain point that you're expressing and what are the alternatives. And today you already understand that pretty well. You already know that you can't scale, it's not easy, your line of business doesn't have it, and so you raise your hand and start to look around. I think the modularity too, when you look at our competitors in this market, it's kind of big bang, and we've gone a completely different direction. We've said, look, build your employee life cycle. If your pain point is recruiting, put workforce planning and analytics, recruiting, marketing, ATS, and onboarding, and layer social on top, and that's the modularity of it, and then connect to your on-premise core if you want, or rip it out and put core HR in the cloud. But then there's the whole rest of the process, the learning management, the comp, succession, performance goals. And this needs to be one horizontal process. So we see it very differently than our competitor. And there's a vast difference in running a business with 23 million subscribers in 3,700 companies in over 30 countries than 500 customers doing core HR. So I think we're just at the beginning. I think it's incredibly encouraging. And I think the model is really, really powerful.
All right, last question. Thank you very much, everybody. Sean Price.
Thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate it. Thanks, Ray. Really appreciate it.